I don't see your dating bios. Have a moment of silent prayer, and then Mr. Coulter is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please bow your heads and join me in a moment of silent prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You can be seated. Roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Coulter?
Here.
Mr. Lovett?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. And Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Approval of minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to our council minutes from September 27th, 2022? Seeing none, those stand as written and distributed. Reports and communication, Mayor Hardman.
Yes, Ms. Hobby, if you would join me up front. And Chief, if you would come on down for me, please. So we got a few introductions and swearing-ins we want to do, but first of all, we want to introduce two of our new employees of the fire department. So Wendy and Samantha, come on down. You're the first two up here, hiding in the back, one in the front. Here we go. So first of all, we have Wendy Walters, and Wendy has been a nurse for 28 years. Come, step up here. Come on, come on up here. Wendy's been a nurse for 28 years, with 26 of those years being in the emergency department. She was the EMS coordinator and clinical nurse educator for the last 2.5 years at Good Samaritan's emergency department. Throughout her career, she's had extensive training in human trafficking and served as a sexual assault nurse examiner. That's quite a, in my other hat, I know what a rewarding experience, I guess is the best way to put that is, but it certainly makes a difference in a lot of women's lives. Wendy has also been a paramedic for 12 years, and 3 years ago began working as a part-time paramedic for us here in Sharonville, which led to her current position as our EMS coordinator for the fire department. She has 2 children that both graduated from Ohio State, and during her time off, I should say graduated from the Ohio State, right? Did you type this up? I mean... I have a nephew that is at the Ohio State. And during her time off, she loves to travel and watch sports. So do you have anybody with you here tonight, Wendy? Are you, other than this great group of folks that you're helping to serve, is that right? We appreciate having you. So Wendy is kind of our transition from our residential assistant intervention nurse. So she's going to take on those duties and a few other things with all of this training and experience that she has. So we are super glad that she's on board with us and to have you. So thanks, Wendy. Next to you, we've got Samantha Wood, and Samantha started her career with us in late June of this year. She was previously employed for nearly 8 years with the Hamilton County Communications Department as a 911 shift supervisor, a very demanding, stressful job. So hopefully this one's a little less so, but working with him can be a whole, I'm not quite sure about that. She also has previous experience as a 911 dispatcher for Loveland Sims, and she enjoys vacationing lakeside and spending her time off with family and friends, including her 5-year-old daughter Olivia and husband Jake, who I think, is that Olivia right there? Hi, Olivia. Who do you got there in your, what do you got there? Oh, it's Hurdle. Perfect. That's wonderful. So your mom's pretty awesome, right? Well, we love having your mom. So we're glad to have her on board with us as over at the fire department. So thank you, ladies, both. These great, fine folks up here in the pink want to shake your hands and welcome you to the city. So go ahead and make your line down and then hang out for a little bit. We're going to do some swearing-ins, and then we're going to hear about some good work and then have food. So. All right, now we're going to swear in a few new firefighters and firefighter paramedics with our Sharonville Fire Department. Ed, Shannon, come on down. You're first up. Right here, sir. This is the hot spot. I love these bios. Like I said, I think every time I say it, it's like it works out great. So, Edward Shannon is a career firefighter paramedic and comes to Sharonville with 10 years of experience in the fire service. He was awarded Paramedic of the Year at his previous employer in 2020. In his free time, he enjoys spending time with his children, Charlotte and Eddie, right? And hanging out with his girlfriend, JoJo. He enjoys anything outdoors and is the proud owner of, this is my favorite part, pygmy goats. How many pygmy goats do you have?
Between us, we have 6.
6. And these are, tell me who you got here.
JoJo, Nora, Quinn, Sawyer, Charlie, and Eddie. Brady Bunch.
Well, congratulations, and if you will raise your right hand, we will make you official. I state your name.
I, Edward Shannon,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
and the city of Sharonville,
and the city of Sharonville,
and that I will honestly and faithfully
and that I will honestly and faithfully
discharge the duties of the office
discharge the duties of the office
of firefighter paramedic,
of firefighter paramedic,
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir. I will let Mr. Cook take a picture.
I'll take the back.
Or the other side. The other side, leave it out, leave it number. All right. Go ahead and grab a seat. We'll get the family here in a little bit. 'Cause they're on the Tony, come on down. Tony Giesner. Tony is a new firefighter that came to us here with 10 years of experience as a paramedic. He has worked as a paramedic in the emergency room at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, a flight paramedic at MedFlight of Ohio, and a combat medic in the Army National Guard. Thank you, sir. In his free time, he enjoys spending time and traveling with his wife, McKenna, and 3 kids, Maverick, who's 3, Penelope, 2, and Soren, who are 6 months and I think they're all back there, is that right? All three of them back there? I see a top head walking around. All right, you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Tony Giesner,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
and the city of Sharon,
and the city of Sharonville,
and that I will honestly and faithfully
that I will honestly and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office of firefighter paramedic
of the office of firefighter paramedic
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
according to law
according to law,
to the best of my ability.
but to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Tony. Glad to have you on board. The one that really matters is back there. Don't ever put Amy down. Hey, good job. That's right. Woohoo. We'll get some pictures with you here in a second. Josh Snyder, come on down, Joshua. Where are you? Up, back there. All right, this is Joshua Snyder. He's a new career firefighter. He was a previous part-time paramedic for this city and a previous paramedic for a neonatal pediatric critical care transport team. That was a mouthful. He also has an extensive career in the military, working within the reconnaissance and intelligence communities, and he also enjoys spending time outside, either camping or traveling. Anyone with you tonight, Joshua, that you want to introduce? All right, well, you got your whole family out there, so it works out well. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Joshua Snyder,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio,
and the city of Sharonville,
and the city of Sharonville,
and that I will honestly and faithfully
and that I will honestly and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office of firefighter paramedic
of office of firefighter paramedic
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
according to law
according to law
to the best of my ability.
and the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Hold tight. Tony and Ed, come on back up. Let's get all three of you up here. Yeah, bring it out. Yeah, he's got his flag, so you might as well. Did you just take that out of your kid's hand? Put the three of them in the middle here, if you want to go on that side, Chief. Vicky, come on over here. There we go. All right, thank you, gentlemen. So we are going to hear from a little presentation from Lieutenant Holland and Lieutenant Thomas. Thank you. And then I believe after that presentation is up, we're going to take a little break. So that'll give you guys time to get pictures with your family. We've got strawberry shortcake. That is the best strawberry shortcake in the world that Miss Hoppy brings for wonderful occasions like this. But we'll hear from our lieutenants about Ohio Task Force 1.
Thank you. I don't even know how I moved the slide there. All right, there we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is just a short synopsis of myself and Lieutenant Thomas's deployment to Eastern Kentucky, July 28th, for the floods that pretty much ravaged the area. Again, these are just some news articles. I won't play those of our deployment. So. Really, this was record-setting, both rainfall and river levels for this this area down in Breathitt County that we deployed to. Initially, the first activation was for a water MRP, which is a smaller, more mobile team that we take boats in a smaller cache with Lieutenant Thomas was on that initial dispatch. Once they went down and did preliminary searches, they realized that this was a larger incident, and they upgraded the deployment to a Type 3, which basically included another essentially 30 members and more equipment out of our headquarters up in Dayton. So these reigns pretty much were defined as not just a 100-year reign, but more or less an 1,000-year reign. One record, it was saying that it basically was not since the Roaring '20s that they experienced this type of rain, which most of the rivers up in the hollers and the creeks normally run about 1 to 2 feet deep. In a matter of about 10 hours, these rivers rose about 18 feet. And of course, it hit in the middle of the night, so most of these people were taken, by surprise. And not only did, their cars and things get swept downstream, but essentially a lot of houses were swept downstream as well. Again, a lot of the river gauges that were giving us this information, many of them were compromised because of the swift water and the levels of which they rose so quickly. So a lot of the river levels weren't very accurate in the readings that we were getting. So I kind of took some readings from surrounding areas that I had posted on there. These are a lot of the responses that were not only local, but also the FEMA teams, such as us with Ohio Task Force 1. Also, Tennessee deployed a team, and so did Missouri. Our task force leader was Chief Adam Landis. Again, this kind of restates how the mission ready package, which is the MRP team that was deployed first, Lieutenant Thomas, was on, and then myself, like I said, the following day. So essentially, all deployments kind of work the same way, where we get the activation orders. We all show up to the warehouse and essentially assemble all of the equipment. Once we get all the equipment assembled, we get the trucks loaded. We have a swearing in. We have a medical checks, make sure all of us are healthy and ready to move out. I have equipment assignments, seating, driving assignments, and again, we get the travel information, pretty much where our destination is going to be and where we're actually going to be for our operations. This was our squads. This was Lieutenant Thomas on the right, myself on the left. We operate in these squads the entire time that we're deployed. We set up a base of operations. In this case, it was in Corbin, Kentucky, basically due to the lack of size and lack of area to sustain these large teams. So we had to be housed in a hotel in Corbin, and then each morning for our 12-hour operation periods, we'd have to travel about an hour, 45 minutes to Breathitt County and Jackson, where we made our way up into these hollers and did our searches. The MRPs pretty much include 4 of our boats, 2 inflatables, 2 hard-bottom boats. They, again, are very rapid in deployment, so they can get into areas that aren't easily accessed. Most of our searches are detailed in digital real-time apps that we can send to the command center so that they can actually see what things are happening in real time. Such as this, a good example, in this short time between August 2nd and August 3rd, we conducted over 3,000 waypoints and 2,000 damage assessments, along with the 97 human interactions and 7 evacuations and 27 assisted. Just again, I threw in a lot of pictures here. It just gives you an example of how much devastation was done in this area. Here's some good examples of, we have canine teams that work with us, both live find and human remain canines. They work well in the boats. Well, I don't know how well in the boats, but they they work in the boats. So we can get, again, to other sides of the rivers and creeks that we can't access otherwise. Again, some of the things that we have to deal with, not only with the rescues, but also with maintaining our own safety with contaminants and a lot of debris that was coming down after the rivers and the creeks receded. Once we get done with our operational periods, we come back to our decon centers, and we each day have to make sure we wash off all these contaminants so that we can restart the whole process the following day. Again, the dogs have to get deconned as well, just as much as the equipment and all the personnel. I know everybody likes pictures of dogs, so there are plenty of them. And again, I already remember the names. Sonny's on the left, and I think I can't remember. So after every 12-hour working period, we'll have morning debriefings as well as evening debriefings, and get our plans for the following day. In our downtime, we train nonstop, just like we do in the firehouse. We've got training set up each day. We'll go over our equipment. We'll go over the areas that are available to us. In this example, we had Lexington Fire Department, which we were able to work with them closely. We also had access to the airport training facility down there. So we had some training with airport rescue or airline rescues, as well as the animal incidents at the Keeneland Raceway or race park down there. Again, we also had plenty of trainings using their local facility down there as well. This is a big part of our trips. I'd throw that in there as well, because our planning section does very well when we make our way down to these devastated areas. Usually, it's minimal operations for places, especially food. And here, our planning team has to find out how to feed over 45 people every day, 3 times a day. If they're in that part where we can actually have something, at a nice or a restaurant or fast food. If not, we have MREs, which are a go-to that most of the time. But I like to give them some props for helping us out a lot. And again, once we get home, it's just returning everything back to status so that it can be ready to be redeployed again. Just like this example right now, how the team has been, actually they just got back 2 days ago from Florida, so they were quickly deployed out there for 2 weeks and just responded home. And again, this is our team picture at the end, and that was pretty much it. I think one of the things that stood out to me the whole time I was down there was during our searches, recognizing that the water had receded quite a bit, but we could still see up in the trees, close to 15, 20 feet up in the trees, mattresses and children's toys and bikes and furniture, and that image just kind of sticks in your head of how devastating these floods were. You got anything to say? Correct.
Your deployment was for how long? How long were you guys down there? 2 weeks? And
That is what the task force is, 2 weeks of self-sustainability.
And it's 12-hour days, every one of those 2 weeks.
12-hour operational days. Both myself and Thomas were also down at Surfside, so that was 12-hour, either you were on a 12-hour day shift or a 12-hour evening shift, and that was constant for 2 weeks.
And does that include that hour and 45 minutes of travel time to and from where you're going, or it did not? Yeah, I mean, well, that's why I'm asking is because you then said in your downtime you're training. I'm like, where is your downtime? But
in our area, the state of Kentucky didn't want any of the teams to leave because they kept predicting rain, and everything was so saturated they were afraid that it was going to take just a little bit of rain for all those creeks to come up again. Where we were is basically at the bottom of those mountains, so any rain in 50 miles they get. So we got held up for an extra week of not being pretty idle, because the state just did not want to let any resources leave. Because there really wasn't anywhere. Lexington was the closest place that really had any kind of resources to help them. So a little unusual for us to get held up like that, but we tried to make do and do some training and stuff, do whatever we could to pass the time. So they finally let us leave.
Well, I am glad that you guys represent the city of Sharonville the way that you do. I think you do a fantastic job when you're with us, but you especially send a great message when we're able to take part in events like this because of the training and expertise and commitment that you have. And I know it takes away from your families and the things that you do. And I mean, that's a big commitment to be gone for 2 weeks and take on tasks like this. So you have my appreciation. I think you have the appreciation of everybody sitting up here
Appreciate
for all your hard work. And we're glad that you guys can come share what you've been
We're
able to
very
do.
grateful for the support for the city and through our chief, who's done it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 15, 20-minute break here for a minute, and there's strawberry shortcake and cookies over here. Help yourself, and if the families want to come up and take turns, we'll get your pictures. Okay, Mayor.
I think that's a good report for the night, don't you think? That's
Yeah,
all I
that
have.
was a great report.
Unless you have any questions.
Any questions for the mayor this evening? Seeing none, we'll go to our Safety Service Director, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. 4 pieces of legislation this evening that council's considering. The first one, Ordinance 2022-47, is the nightclub and nightclub promoter amendments that were talked about a couple council meetings ago. Letters were sent out to everybody. From what I understand, no comments were received. So unless there's any questions for Chief Nesbitt, we will proceed forward.
Any questions? Thank you.
Alrighty, ordinance 2022-51E is the annual high grass and weed special assessments onto properties. There was a question at Law Committee about the Grandview property, which is the 6th property down on the spreadsheet, whether that was the vacant lot on Grandview, and yes, in fact, that is a vacant lot. That was the issue. Ordinance 2022-52 is the annual update to the codified ordinances, just the annual process again. Any questions on that? And then ordinance 2022-54E deals with the purchase of some flock safety license plate readers that Chief Nesbitt is here to talk about.
Thank you. So the flock safety project started in 2019. It was first presented to council as part of a budget process. And flock is a name brand of a license plate reader. And basically, a license plate reader does just that. It captures the license plate information for passing vehicles.
Is your mic on? Oh, sorry.
Sounds like it is.
Thank you.
I'm just not loud enough. Sorry, I can be louder. My daughter says I'm really loud. So license plate readers enable us to capture the comings and goings of vehicles that are entered. So there's a whole validation process for entering a vehicle. The criteria for that is established through ordinance and outside governing entities to ensure that when an agency enters a vehicle that it is vetted and that we have the correct vehicle and that information is maintained and monitored to be accurate. The flock safety cameras access that hot sheet information and alert us when a vehicle with that license plate or that vehicle fingerprint enters into our community. That allows us to direct our resources to target areas. So when somebody who has got a warrant or the vehicle is stolen enters Sharonville passing one of these cameras, it will send an electronic notification to our system that will allow us to deploy an officer to that area. And it will capture an image of the back of the vehicle, so we will be able to identify what we're looking for. And it will put an officer in the area of the license plate camera that caught it. So it helps us deliver resources more efficiently and more expeditiously so that we can hopefully interdict the criminal element. So in the budget, there was $74,000 that was allocated towards this budget. And since taking over as chief, I inherited the project, and we've looked at it, we've looked at the competitors, we've made sure that flock safety is in fact the best option for this particular type of service, and that the city is getting their best investment. With this recommendation, will allow for us to put in 12 license plate reader cameras, focusing primarily on the west side of town. If you look at your images, you'll see that the Chester Road is an area. The north and south limits of that will allow us to monitor traffic to and fro through the Chester Road corridor, the Northern Lights District. And in addition to that, we will have 2 cameras in the Mosteller 275 exchange, and a little bit further east at the 42 and 275 exchange will also capture that. Now, these 12 camera placements represent an ongoing investment of $30,000. So the proposed project would pay a 2-year contract to place these cameras at these locations, and this is as it's described, as a white glove service. So there is no additional cost to us. We don't own these cameras, we don't maintain these cameras, we don't have to pay to store the data that these cameras capture. We don't have to replace them if they break, if the wind tears them down, if somebody vandalizes them. We don't have to do anything we just continue to get the service. We own the data, so it's not shared with any third-party companies. And we have a validation process in place that would require authentication and reason for you to search the database materials. So even officers would have to have justification to access this data. So it's very transparent, it has checks and balances. It is not traffic related in terms of speed, stop signs, or anything of that nature. So there's no tickets that are off of this. There's no traffic enforcement. It is a criminal interdiction effort, and that's the primary focus of this. In Sharonville, we will have 12 cameras. Our communities around us, this is our 12 cameras in blue and red. So the red ones are our 12 proposed cameras. The blue would be expansion, because the company's always trying to sell you more, so they wanted to let us know what it would look like if we had more. But all of these green flags around us are the communities that have cameras in place currently operationally. Blue Ash has 36 cameras, I believe, and like numbers are in Westchester and Mason as well, and other communities throughout the state. There's in excess of 1,000 cameras that we have the potential to access this data from, and it's, in that effect, basically a force multiplier. So it gives us the ability to track our criminals into other communities, and other communities' criminals to alert us when they arrive here. Recent examples, there was an offense that happened in Detroit, and they made an arrest in Florida. And throughout their journey down the 75 corridor, they were captured at various different flock locations that allowed law enforcement to get there. In another example, there was a stranger-on-stranger abduction, and from the time of the offense, from the kidnapping of the child till reunited with family, was 6 hours using flock safety tracking technology. It's very effective at what it does. It helps us as law enforcement work together. We can share Blue Ash data, we can share Westchester data, so on, and it helps us capture more criminals and offset the criminal element.
I could just from an example as to the work of these cameras and what they help as far as law enforcement standpoint goes. We had an individual who committed 7 aggravated robberies of local gas stations in the northern Warren County area. He would drive into the gas stations, took his license plate off of his car, so there was no license plate on it. A flock camera managed to get his car leaving, but again, there was no license plate. But the technology in these flock cameras as such is that they can measure, I think in this particular instance, they measured the tail lights and the distance of the tail lights and the look of the tail lights to be able to say the make and the model of this car was such and such, which then led to a search of cars matching that, put that out over flock cameras, ultimately found, because he would put his license plate back on when he would be doing legal activities, and so they were able to track that guy's car, and that's basically, that was what ended up getting him charged and convicted for these 7 aggravated robberies. So they are a very valuable resource for what we've done. I think when this came to law committee, there was some question about the ongoing expense of this and attaching it to our operating budget, especially doing it right now as opposed to waiting for our budget process, because I know there are some other operating changes, expenses that we'll probably be recommending some portion of with regard to the police department. However, after looking at what we have done with some other expenditures of this nature as far as classifying them as capital expenditures and within the capital budget, I'm extremely comfortable with us moving forward with this and being able to say that we'll certainly have the ability to continue the 3rd year of our contract, which we would be committed to doing, but I think we'll certainly have more to continue on beyond that, and we'll find this to be a very valuable law enforcement tool if you vote to do that, and it would be nice to be able to get them installed before the winter time and get them started. So you already got the money budgeted for basically the next 2 years. Is what this first payment will do, and it's already budgeted through our capital budget this year. That will take care of
the first 2 years, and then we'll have a third year that will be approximately another $30,000 in 2024's budget. So,
Any questions?
Yes, how many cameras do we currently have?
We currently have no cameras.
Oh, all right.
of this nature, obviously, they have their body cameras, they have their
Right.
cruiser
No, you're
cameras.
right. Yeah, the-
We have no cameras.
I didn't want to say the name of the camera, I didn't want to mess it up, but
So-
you have camera. Yeah.
License plate reader technology is something the police department has been using for many years. We had two license plate reader, mobile license plate reader systems attached to cop cars, and we would drive them around and we'd field them as much as we could, but that system has become so old and antiquated, it's no longer supported, so it's defunct. This is in effect a replacement, but it's a far more powerful replacement. It has more and better analytics than what that ever had, so it's more versatile. And because so many other communities have adapted into it, that's the force multiplier piece.
Thank you.
On that note, do we have any, like, just traffic cameras that are in the city? Do you know? I mean, just,
No,
like,
traffic,
I mean,
just,
like, that's not say reading license plate, but would show
Just to show
cars
intersections.
or intersections or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we monitor,
I thought we did.
Yeah.
So we have some just cameras, like surveillance cameras thing. This actually is reading the license plate thing. Are there any other questions, Mr. Tankersley?
Okay, I'm old school on license plate readers, as you know. So with these cameras being fixed, I'm taking for granted that these are fixed cameras.
They are, sir.
How does the officer get notified and by who?
Okay.
What's in the car, I guess you
Yes,
could
sir.
say?
So it simply comes two ways. It will make a notification to dispatch. So our in-house dispatch, our clerk dispatchers in Sharonville will get the alert as to which camera picked up whatever they picked up, whatever wanted or entered vehicle. They will be able to make a radio transmission. In addition to that, there is a mobile app that can be running, so the officer can receive alerts that way. So it's real time, and it's not quite instantaneous, but the lag time is very short. So you get a notification if it's on, so all of our cars have smartphones. If you're running the app, for example, if you're running the Flock app, you will get an alert that whatever it is just happened and which camera triggered it. So if it's on your beat, you can be able to respond to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? While you're standing there, I'm going to ask a favor.
Yes, ma'am.
We all have these great pink shirts on.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about it a little bit? And then also talk about the no shave.
All my whiskers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is.
What we're doing to be philanthropic.
It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and as part of that, one of our staff, Stephanie, is going through treatment right now. And in support of her, we are doing what we can to provide encouragement and support to that. And these T-shirts represent that, along with bracelets and lapel pins. My shirt's on too, but it doesn't exactly show in this kit. We're a family, and coming together in support of Stephanie. And last year, we lost Officer Usher to cancer, and it hits home. So we want to do everything that we can to support that, and we're very grateful for all of your visible support. Thursday, I think the whole city's coming out in pink T-shirts to show support, so we're looking forward to that. The proceeds from the sale of these shirts goes to help with Stephanie's expenses. And the whiskers are part of that process. Each participating officer, whether they choose to shave or not, has contributed, and those proceeds will also be aimed towards those expenses.
Thank you.
So, thank you, everybody.
Any more questions? We're good? All right, Jim. Thank you.
And that's it for the
That's
legislature.
it? Okay. For my report, I just want to remind everybody, make sure you put our budget meeting. It's the 10th, and food will be ready at 5 p.m. And we'll be getting stuff out probably the beginning of November. Maybe a week before, maybe 3 days before, but you'll have plenty of time to get that information. If you ask questions or you want to ask a question, don't forget the rule. You have to include all of us, so we're not all bombarding Jim and Scott with the same questions. So make sure you hit the elected on your email, and so we all get it, if you don't mind, please. Thank you. And that's all I have. We'll go to our clerk of council, Ms. Buhite.
Thanks. Last reminder that the public hearing is scheduled for October 25th at 7 p.m. in council chambers regarding the expansion of the Northern Lights Community Entertainment District.
Thank you. Law Director, Mr. Lippert.
No report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an opportunity for residents that wish to be heard this evening. You're good? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Council committees, community development, Mr. Wilson.
No report.
Community services, Mr. Lovett.
Thank you, no report, but on November 16th will be our next community services meeting. Unfortunately, I'm out of town the first week of November, and I don't really want to shove that between a council meeting and budget meeting, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Did you give me those?
Yeah, you gave me a lot of kudos on the email. I appreciate that.
You want me to put them in the minutes?
Sure. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Budget and finance, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. No report this evening, but we did meet to review the GFOA study. I hope every council member found that worth their while. I think it was an outstanding report. Our next scheduled meeting is November 8th at 6 p.m. in the administrative conference room. And any questions on that? Okay, and then project oversight, no report this evening.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Honored citizens, Mrs. Knight.
Yes, tonight I'm going to honor all our Sharonville breast cancer survivors that have fought a good fight, and I know some people on the board here have done that. I also wanted to mention Stephanie, our police officer, and have her in our thoughts. She's fighting a battle, so let's all think of her, and don't forget, think pink.
Think pink, that's right. Thank you. Law and Public Safety, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. The Law and Public Safety Committee meeting will be October 18th, 4 p.m. Administrative Conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Rule suspension motion. Is there a motion for first and only reading with immediate effectivity of Ordinance 2022-51E and 2022-54E? Also a first and only reading with a 30-day effectivity for Ordinance 2022-52. So moved by Mr. Coulter, second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor, yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And that does stand. We'll move to unfinished business, please.
Third reading of Ordinance 2022-47, amending Business Regulation Code, Chapter 731, Nightclubs and Nightclub Promoters.
Is there a motion to pass Ordinance 2022-47? So moved by Mrs. Knight, second by Mr. Cook. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-47 has been approved.
Perfect, thank you.
This is a second reading of Resolution 2022-R21, expansion of the Community Entertainment District known as the Northern Lights Community Entertainment District to include the Sharonville Downtown Loop.
New business.
All right. First and only reading, Emergency Ordinance 2022-51, County Auditor of a on certain property of in accordance with the Ohio 731 and Sharonville 1.05 to cut weeds, abate nuisances, and Section 521.13 weed removal for calendar year 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass Ordinance 2022-51E? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency Ordinance 2022-51E has been approved. First and only reading of just Ordinance 2022-52, enacting the codified ordinance changes provided by the Walter Drain Company.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-52? So moved by Mr. Cook, second by Mr. Schmidt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-52 has been approved. First reading of Ordinance 2022-53E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into an addendum to the current contract with Swim Safe Pool Management for aquatic operations, extending the contract for 1 year for the calendar year 2023, and approving a fee schedule for that year. All right. And first and only reading of Emergency Ordinance 2022-54E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract for the purchase, installation, and subsequent maintenance of automatic license plate readers for the Sharonville Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-54E? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency Ordinance 2022-54E has been approved.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
One more time for residents. We're good. Any other matters this evening? Mr. Coulter?
I just have one quick statement to make. So on October 4th, my mother-in-law, who lives at the end of our street, had a pretty good medical emergency, and my wife and I made it down there as my father-in-law had called us. We decided to call 911, and our paramedics showed up quickly. They were very professional, very empathetic to the situation. A police officer also responded, Officer Morozic. Great to have that team down there, and I just can't say enough good things about the Sharonville Fire and Sharonville Police. You never want to be in a situation where you need them, but it's a great group of people to have dealt with, so I want to thank all of them for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mrs. Knight?
I don't know why the fire department didn't remind everybody, but the open house is this Saturday, 12 to 3 at the main station over on Chester Road. So it's, if you have little kids, it's awesome. They have so much to do. They have food. They have anything you want. So mark that on your calendar.
I believe, they're even bringing out a communications center, I believe, too, Hamilton County Communications, so it should be a fun afternoon. Anything else? All right, is there a motion for adjournment? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Lovett. All those in favor, yes? Yes. Those opposed, no, and we do stand